इस्लाम से ना भागो।
Those who are familiar with the history of Islam are well aware that the early Muslims faced untold persecutions at the hands of the Quraysh of Mecca. Those Muslims showed an unmatched level of determination and steadfastness in their faith. When the oppression of those oppressors reached its peak, Allah finally instructed the Holy Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to migrate from Mecca to Medina. But this was not the end of it. It's good to point out here that the Muslims were being persecuted only due to the fact that they had accepted Islam. The Quraysh of Mecca were hell-bent on destroying this new faith. So they pursued the Muslims up to Medina, and they raised armies after armies so as to annihilate the small community of Muslims that took refuge in this town. It was only then that Allah gave the Muslims the permission to respond in self-defense. They were allowed to defend themselves so as they could practice their faith in peace. Not only to practice their faith, but also to protect Medina as a town. Actually, this period was a very difficult one for the Muslims, when they were asked to be constantly on their guards. They were asked to be vigilant because the enemies could attack at any time.
And make ready for them whatever you can of armed force and of mounted pickets at the frontier, whereby you may frighten the enemy of Allah and your enemy and others besides them whom you know not, but Allah knows them. And whatever you spend in the way of Allah, it shall be repaid to you in full, and you shall not be wronged. This verse teaches Muslims that efficient preparation is the best means of preventing war. It teaches them that they should not only keep a sufficient fighting force in the country, but also an adequate number of troops on the frontier, so that the enemy might refrain from attack, thus enabling the faithful to live in peace. O ye who believe, be steadfast and strive to excel in steadfastness, and be on your guard, and fear Allah that you may prosper. The verse, which is the last of the present surah, is important and mentions the essential means for the attainment of national goal. Taken in the physical sense, it signifies that in order to attain their goal, Muslims should not only be patient and steadfast and make greater sacrifices than their opponents, but should always be on their guard and should particularly be watchful about strengthening their frontiers.
The instruction given in those verses to Muslims to remain vigilant, to protect the frontiers, refer to a very particular point in time where the Muslim state was under attack or even under siege. But the real question is, how do you apply those instructions today? In Sahih Bukhari, mentioning the advent of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam in the latter days, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam prophesied that Isa will come to break the cross, فَيَكْسِرُ الصَّلِيبِ, that is, he will break the might of Christianity, that the Messiah will come to kill the swine, وَيَقْتُلُ الْخِنْزِيرِ, meaning that the Messiah will purify the people from swine-like behaviors, and most importantly, وَيَدَعُ الْجِزْيَةِ, that he will come to abolish the jizya. The jizya is a tax which is taken from non-Muslim citizens living in a Muslim state at the time of war. The inference being here that at the time of the Messiah, in the latter days, religious wars will be abolished. In other versions of the same hadith, the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, وَيَدَعُ الْحَرْبِ, that the Messiah will come to abolish religious wars. So in this case, how do you implement or how do you act upon the instruction of the Holy Quran of Rabitu, to guard your frontiers, to remain vigilant? The promised Messiah ﷺ, founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, gave a beautiful insight on the meanings of this verse of the Holy Quran.
A distinction of the Arabic language. The Arabic language is extraordinary and truly matchless. The word ribat, which appears in the aforementioned verse, relates to the philosophy of physical conflict, battle, and the art of warfare on the one hand, but also conveys the essence and worthy nature of one's inner spiritual war and struggle of self-purification. This is why the Arabic language is the mother of languages. It expresses that which cannot be expressed by other languages. Now reflect that this very word ribat, which refers to horses that are tied at the border for defense against the enemy, is also used to refer to those souls which are trained in preparation for the inner battle against Satan that constantly wages on within. So the Muslims were given two responsibilities: to be on guard and attack apparent enemies, to be steadfast and spread the message of Islam. It is absolutely true that Islam was granted two strengths in war. The first strength was used in the early period of Islam for the purpose of defense and to seek retribution. When the idolaters of Arabia oppressed and persecuted the Muslims, a party of 1,000 valiantly took on 100,000 disbelievers and exhibited this pure strength and grandeur in every trying time. The present era calls for feats in spiritual battle. Now, in the era that we are passing through at present, there is absolutely no need for any physical war. As a matter of fact, in the latter days, precedents were to be set in battles that would ensure within, spiritual battles. For in the present age, an elaborate arsenal of equipment has been prepared to fuel apostasy and irreligion within the hearts of people. And so, it is necessary to combat these forces with similar weaponry because this is a time of peace and harmony. We enjoy every kind of comfort and security. Everyone is free to preach and propagate their religion and to follow its injunctions. Given that Islam is a true advocate for peace, rather, when Islam is the foremost religion that truly disseminates peace, harmony and safety, how can it seek to establish its earlier practice in this era of peace and freedom? Hence, it is the latter practice, that is, the undertaking of spiritual struggle, that is needed in this day and age.
In a nutshell, the promised Messiah ﷺ is explaining that today we are no more living in an era of religious wars, but the constant struggle to achieve self-purification, the constant war against satanic inclinations is ongoing, and this will never end. Because unfortunately today we are living in a world where we are surrounded by evil temptations, and those temptations are present in each and every household. So the Quranic instruction given to believers of Rabitu, to remain on your guard, to be vigilant, to be constantly engaged in doing good deeds, is more crucial and relevant today than it has ever been.
जागो शम्सो